officially on. Welcome everyone to another live book reading, and this one is so extra special because I got my books in. So literally so many boxes of books came in fresh off the printing press. Oh, and also just a heads up, my ring light is already acting up. I don't know why. I guess I'm super excited and the energy is really intense. But yeah, I'm super pumped about this. Okay. Check it out. I'm so excited. I think I got like 400 or 500 books. Dun 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 dun. Fresh off the printing press. Oh, I'm so pumped about this. It's just crazy to have it in your hands. So, I'm going to be reading actually from my book today. And I'm really, really pumped about that. And then my publisher sent me this, which is like a giant, it's kind of blurry, but a giant canvas print of my of the cover of my book, which is awesome. So it just feels so freaking good to have it in my hands. And it's pretty much the same size, same length as my last book, which is really cool. And I also finished my audiobook recording. That was fantastic. I went to a studio over here in Las Vegas, and I had a producer for the audiobook and then also an audio engineer. And I worked with them in the studio. We had 3 days in the studio to record the audiobook. I was able to get it done in 2 days of recording, so I feel really good about that. And they were like, wow, you're a natural. And I'm like, oh, thank you. Which is just, I don't know, like I'm just thrown into anxiety reading out loud and really having to hear my own voice in the headphones. It's just, I don't think anyone enjoys reading out loud, but I really got into it and it was so, so awesome reading my own book for the first time in its entirety. Obviously, you read through it during the editing stage, but it was just really cool. So today, a little bit of a lowdown on today. Just looking for chapter 5. Perfect. Okay, so a couple things. I'm going to be reading part of chapter 5 today, which is all about rewiring your mind. This is where we get a little bit technical and a little bit deep. And this is where I present my essentially my main solution around anxiety. And it's a way to reprogram your brain around anything in life so that you can live your best life possible. So it goes way deeper than just anxiety, which I'm super excited about. And then I will be doing a live Q&A off of the Zoom room. So just keep that in mind that if you do have questions about anxiety, mental health, sort of what we're talking about here today, or just, questions about the topic that we're going to be reading, please go ahead and put that in the little Q&A tab at the bottom of the Zoom room. And I know people are watching this on YouTube as well. I won't be taking YouTube questions, but one of our moderators can actually send you the Zoom link into the chat room. And so if you wanted to hop from YouTube over here to Zoom, go ahead and do that if you're watching this live. And then at the end of the hour, we slash I am going to be choosing one, probably two, because I'm feeling two people, but two people for a free 30-minute session giveaway. And I will be choosing them intuitively in the Zoom room. Okay, so like I said, if you're on YouTube, you want to hop on over to Zoom, and then obviously we will go ahead. You can correspond with Lauren, and you can book in a session probably in the next month or two, maybe beginning of January. New year, new you. Perfect time for a session. So, okay, yeah. And then just a heads up, guys, we have officially extended the the anxiety book giveaway. So for anyone who pre-orders the anxiety book, either the Audible or the hardcover, sorry, hardcover, soft cover, but the physical book, or even the Kindle edition, just screenshot your receipt and send that over to us, email that to us, and we will send you a really incredible anxiety kit with the 24-page workbook and the 12 videos. And if you have started that workbook already, please mention in the comments how that's going for you. This is obviously the perfect time and community to talk about that. So we'll be giving that away with pre-orders leading all the way to the book launch, which is January 20th. Let's get into it. I am so excited. And one more note, just like a personal thing. Um, we're going into heavy holiday season. And, for Americans, we just crossed Thanksgiving. This year has been so confronting. It's been so emotional. It's been so entangled. It's been so chaotic. It's been so intense for so many of us. And I just feel like the holiday season is usually always like the pitch point of things, because it's the holidays and it's also the end of the year. And so I always have a lot of like compassion and thoughts around family, and how Christmas especially is sometimes the best time of the year for some people. And for many other people, it is the worst time of year because maybe someone you loved passed away. Maybe you had a childhood full of really awful Christmases, or what have you. So this is a good season to get this book and to start your journey and to pre-order it and to also get that kit so that you have the tools to get through this season is a long-winded way of saying that. All right, cool. I'm gonna see if I can do this so I can show off my book while I read it. It's so exciting. Okay. Chapter 5, Anxiety Alchemy, Rewriting the Future. Hey, anxiety ally. Have you ever been lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, as your mind takes you on a never-ending ride through future what-ifs? Maybe you've got a friend's birthday party coming up, and you find yourself wondering, what will I wear? Who's going to be there? Will I even know enough people to feel comfortable? Or perhaps it's a little something more serious, like a new dog sitter coming over for the first time. Will they take good care of your pup? What if something terrible happens, like your dog escaping the leash and running off? The possibilities are endless, and the thoughts relentless. It's like your brain is trying to map out every scenario, big or small, to make sure you're prepared for everything. But instead of feeling in control, you end up trapped in a loop of overthinking, unable to stop. If you are anything like me, you've probably tried to escape this spiral by distracting yourself. Maybe you open TikTok, hoping that a couple of funny videos will drown out the noise. But inevitably, the next worry sneaks in. And before you know it, you're back in the loop, replaying the same exhausting cycle. If this sounds familiar, then this chapter is for you. We're about to dive into the wild world of future anxiety. Those thoughts that pull you out of the present moment and into a tangled mess of infinite what ifs. The exciting part is that your anxiety isn't your enemy. It can actually be a tool. This isn't about silencing your mind or avoiding your thoughts. It's about learning to work with your anxiety, channel it into something productive, and navigate your life with clarity and purpose. You're not powerless in the face of your worries. You're powerful. And this chapter is going to show you just how much. Let's dive in and start turning these anxiety, anxious what ifs into a confident, I've got this. You're ready for this next step. Let's go. What is future anxiety? When your spidey sense alert goes off, Your mind gets focused on what it perceives as the biggest threat. So, believe it or not, having anxious thoughts about the future can be a good sign. It's often a clear indication that you've done a fair amount of work on yourself. You see, if you still needed to heal the past, your anxious thoughts would be focused on the past. When you've done the work on healing trauma and unresolved emotions, your mind hyperfocuses on the future as the cause of the alarm trigger instead. Just because your mind worries about the future, though, doesn't mean you've healed all of the past, but like I said, it's a good indication that you are making big strides. However, the main issue persists. Your alarm bells are ringing, and your mind is attempting to justify this signal by finding something to blame. Future anxiety is the emotional discomfort, stress, or fear experienced when our thoughts become preoccupied with uncertain events that have not yet taken place. It arises from imagining negative outcomes, which often leads to a sense of helplessness or loss of control. Future anxiety manifests as excessive worry, apprehension, or unease about what might happen, which then interferes with our sense of calm. In other words, future anxiety pulls our mental and emotional focus away from the present moment into hypotheticals, usually worst case scenarios. This creates unnecessary stress because our minds perceive potential threats that we currently have no immediate control over. Common examples of future anxiety include worries about financial security, career success, relationships, health concerns, or global and societal issues. The uncertainty about what will or could happen in the future tends to magnify anxiety and intensify our emotional reaction. It's important to recognize that future anxiety is driven primarily by perception rather than reality. Our imagination inflates potential risks, often blowing them out of proportion, creating even more emotional distress. Our minds only ever land on these imaginary fears because they are trying to alert us to something. Conventional therapy methods like mindfulness will have you refocus on the present moment when one of these episodes arise. Although it's important to regain your perspective by bringing your awareness into the present, this technique won't end anxiety for good. It will only stop it in the moment. So, what will end future anxiety for good? Trust. Creating an ongoing sense of trust within yourself helps you to feel like no matter what life throws at you, you can manage. Creating this trust takes time. We aren't just trying to solve the symptoms. We are trying to reprogram your brain so that they don't arise in the first place. Reprogramming takes time, dedication, and most of all, awareness. And in order to have full awareness, we must prioritize ourselves over others and over external factors that we can't control. This chapter contains the core of my anxiety solutions. So don't feel like you need to just apply them to your future anxieties. Applying them to all aspects of your life will greatly benefit your overall well-being and freedom. Taking your power back from future anxiety. So far, we've covered ways to handle anxiety caused by past and present situations. Now it's time to deal with future anxiety, not just to manage it, but to also use what we've learned to improve our lives. I want to introduce you to my main anxiety strategy. I call it RENEW for short, RENU, and it stands for recognize, neutralize, and utilize. With regular practice and application, this strategy not only stops anxiety spirals in their tracks, but it will also help you sustainably end the cycle of anxiety altogether. So let's begin. Recognize. One of the most powerful things we can do when dealing with anxiety is to recognize when we're experiencing it. Just noticing our anxious state is already a huge accomplishment. Anxiety, as uncomfortable as it feels, actually has a unique advantage. It makes us hyper-aware. Much like physical pain, anxiety demands our immediate attention and pulls us deep into our own minds through its discomfort. When you're working on healing anxiety, it's crucial to catch yourself in the very moment anxiety strikes. This can be challenging, especially with future-focused anxiety, because our minds love to conjure up vivid worst-case scenarios. These imaginary situations can feel incredibly real, since they trigger a powerful emotional response in our bodies. Research shows that our brains can't tell the difference between something that's actually happening and something we're just imagining. A notable study from the University College London, UCL, explored how vividly imagined experiences can blur the line between imagination and reality. Participants were asked to imagine visual patterns, such as altering black and white lines, while their brain activity was monitored. The findings revealed that the brain encoded the vividness of both real and imagined stimuli in the same manner, which can lead to confusion between actual perception and imagination. What this means is that anxious thoughts can feel just as real as lived experiences. Typically, when future anxiety arises, our attention naturally shifts to the emotional drama of these imagined scenarios rather than the anxiety itself. Here's the subtle yet transformative shift you can make. Instead of getting caught up in the story your mind is creating, gently redirect your awareness back to the feeling of anxiety itself. The tightness, the racing heartbeat, the tension. By simply observing the anxiety as a present moment experience, rather than engaging with anxious thoughts about the future, you effectively interrupt the cycle. This small change in awareness can significantly shift a limiting, stressful mental state into one of clarity, freedom, and calm. It's important to understand that the entire cycle of anxiety, from the initial spidey sense alert to the physical and emotional symptoms that follow, is simply a mechanism designed to get your attention. Your body and mind are not working against you. They are trying to signal that something feels off, even if you can't immediately identify what that is. Most of us experience anxiety as a reaction to these signals rather than a message to be observed. When we don't recognize the alert early on, our subconscious ramps up the volume, escalating symptoms in order to force us to pay attention. The longer we ignore or resist these signals, the louder they become. This is why anxiety often feels like it spirals out of control. The body is desperately trying to be heard. If you start the cycle with full awareness and recognition, the symptoms no longer need to yell to get your attention. The moment you acknowledge the initial alert without fear, judgment, or immediate action, you interrupt the entire chain reaction. Instead of being caught off guard and thrown into a spiral, you create space to respond intentionally rather than reacting impulsively. Think of it like an alarm clock. If you wake up at the first sound, there's no need for it to keep blaring, creating a sense of panic in us. Anxiety works the same way. When you tune in early, acknowledging, observing, and staying present, you take back control of your nervous system. Instead of letting anxiety dictate your experience, you shift into a state of conscious navigation. One of the easiest ways to bring recognition to your internal anxiety triggers is to get curious about it. Curiosity will open your mind and help you to observe the symptoms and triggers rather than fear them and respond with the fight, flight, or freeze mechanisms. Here are 2 questions that you can ask yourself to help support your recognition and curiosity. What is my body trying to tell me right now? Instead of reacting to the physical discomfort, approach it with curiosity. Pay attention to signs like a racing heart, sweating, tight chest, or restlessness. By observing the sensations in our body, we are able to ground back into the present moment and switch our attention from our racing minds to something more tangible. Typically, when we begin to feel anxiety symptoms, we try to mask or mitigate them by distracting ourselves from them. By bringing your awareness to the sensations, you can begin changing your response to them from fear to curiosity. And the next question is, what thoughts are looping in my mind and what are they focused on? Asking this question helps you to recognize repetitive or negative thought patterns. Instead of getting caught up in the emotional response to your thoughts, this shifts you into a state of curiosity, allowing you to observe anxiety rather than fear it. When you approach your thoughts with curiosity instead of resistance, you create space to learn from them rather than feeling like they are an enemy to battle. If you find it difficult to bring awareness to your thoughts in the moment, that's completely okay. Simply asking the question plants the seed of awareness, and over time, it becomes easier to recognize and understand your thought patterns. By recognizing anxiety at its root, you can stop it from escalating before it ever takes over. That is the power of awareness. In fact, simply acknowledging its presence can significantly reduce its intensity. All anxiety truly wants is attention and recognition. That can calm the nervous system and create distance between you and the anxiety altogether. This awareness helps to stop anxiety in the moment, offering immediate relief. However, recognition alone isn't enough to prevent anxiety from returning. If we want to create long-term change, we must go deeper. This brings us to the second step of the renew process: neutralize. I'm going to stop there. There is so much packed into that chapter, which I absolutely love. And then we're going to take questions. So please just go to Zoom, pop in your questions in the little Q&A. It could be about future anxiety. It could be about mental health. It could be about really anything that you're going through right now, and how to sort of, what principles from the book can I help you with to guide you out of that state of being? And so in this book, I have sort of the root cause of anxiety pinpointed to past anxiety, present anxiety, and future anxiety. And it's never been explained that way. And I think for me, sort of my biggest thing is obviously not just solving anxiety, but getting rid of it for good, like sustainable solutions to anxiety. As an anxiety sufferer myself, I've only ever noticed that it's the symptoms of anxiety that are targeted and not the root cause. And if we only try and deal with or cover up the symptoms, then we're only ever going to deal with it in the moment, but it's going to keep coming back until we deal with the root. As a past life regressionist, I always found that whether it be a trauma that happened in this lifetime, something that repeated, or just in general, stuff of the past, you know, you have to go to the root cause of that feeling or that emotional turmoil or that trauma in order to heal it. It's like you have to go back to the you have to go back to the starting place in order to complete it. And that's basically the approach that I'm taking with anxiety. We have to go to the root cause of anxiety in order to understand what exactly it is, why it's occurring and happening, and then how to resolve it. So, like I said, I was able to pinpoint anxiety coming from the past, anxiety coming from the present, and anxiety coming from the future, and pinpoint each one of those causes. And I think most of us have a little bit of each, and then bringing the solutions to each of the causes of anxiety. So, first asking yourself, obviously, after reading the full book, is my anxiety coming from the past, the present, or the future? And then following up with, okay, if it's present moment anxiety, where in my present moment is it coming from? Is it the conversation that I had at the grocery store with the person checking me out? Was it my neighbor, kind of giving me a side eye about my garbage cans or whatever, right? Like, where am I taking that anxiety on from? And then how can I apply different solutions to help heal that and move forward and feel better? So it's a deep dive. It is a deep dive. But like this chapter was saying, when we become curious about it and we stop defending, fighting, fleeing, or freezing around it, it's finally heard. You finally listen to it, and then it ends. And for me, it's kind of like I don't know, fool me once, shame on me, fool me twice. Wait, fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me. I've got my whole life with trying to push it down, suppress it, run away from it, numb it, distract from it. And then it finally ends the second I confront it, um, and look at it and feel it and then do something about it. And then the rest of the chapter goes into what do we do about it? Recognize, neutralize, and then utilize that. And then the last chapter of the book is anxiety is your superpower. I am going to do a couple more readings, maybe one for December and then one for January. And then more Q&As and stuff too. So yeah, so I don't know. It's really exciting. It's definitely a very different approach, and I feel really good about it. And I think it's going to help a lot of people, and I really believe that. All right, let's go over to the questions. And then, like I mentioned, at the end of this, we'll go and I'll choose two people for a free 30-minute session giveaway. All right, this is a good question. This is from Crystal. I have complex PTSD. How do you decipher what is real or just a trigger? That's a really great question. I do have to mention, as I do mention in the book, I'm not a licensed therapist or psychologist. I do not have a background in this. If it resonates with you, it's for you. If not, like that's okay. Just leave it. All right. This isn't like medical advice or um, psychiatric advice, but I do have a perspective on this because I've suffered from this my whole life. Obviously, I don't suffer from complex PTSD, so I just had to kind of mention that and just say take everything with a grain of salt, as always. Okay, so with PTSD and really just anything, like it could even be um, it could be something like bipolar or schizophrenia or just having extreme emotions. And in the book, I mentioned that when we don't deal with things, we become an oversaturated sponge. Essentially, that means that you are a sponge so filled up with energy, emotion, trauma, triggers, whatever, that one more drop into that sponge is just going to create this outpouring of water. And this is what happens in our day. And I have quizzes actually throughout the book to sort of determine and gauge, are you healed? Do you have any past trauma? Are you an oversaturated sponge? I have a quiz, like, are you the oversaturated sponge? And one of the biggest questions in that quiz is, do you react easily? Like, are you triggered easily? Do you have strong reactions throughout the day? Obviously, I notice that when I'm underslept and underfed and under a lot of emotional stress, small things that never used to bother me before start to really trigger me, start to bother me. And I think it's ridiculous. And yet there's so much emotional reaction. And of course, that emotional reaction has nothing to do with the trigger itself. Um, Now, when it comes to your question, I have complex PTSD, how to decipher what is real or just a trigger. And like I said, like this is just my own perspective. We kind of have to understand our mind, our triggers, and what's real as all the same thing. Now, of course, there are boundaries and borders, and there are other things, and sort of a healthy balance between, let's call it this reality and infinity. Um, it's like, it's a very fine line to blur those lines and have a lot of trust in your mind, and then to also create healthy boundaries. I have so much to say on this topic. Two things I want to say. One is no matter what, there is always going to be two sides to everything, and not even just two sides, but multiple sides. Let's call them two different perceptions. Someone could think this book is the most amazing thing that's ever been created, and someone can think this book is a heap of trash. And you get that in every single social media post you post, every single video, every selfie. Like you're always going to have people who love it and people who hate it. It's going to be a spectrum. Um, and so a lot of healing anxiety and potentially PTSD is about observing it a different way. Um, and so I would recommend if you are someone who gets triggered really often to sit with the initial trauma, and those triggers will decrease. And in the next part of that chapter that I was reading, I go into how to sit with a trauma. And it really is about finding a safe place in your home or otherwise, but a nice, safe, quiet place. Potentially, I say sit with a therapist, sit with a friend. Like if you don't feel safe revisiting those traumas yourself, sit with someone, gain access to some support. I highly recommend that. And therapy is great too. You know what I mean? Eastern meets Western. And so, and then once you're in that safe place and you feel supported by yourself or others, time to revisit that trauma. Just by yourself, just in your own mind. And it could be from the military, it could be from childhood, it could be from a past lifetime, it could be irrational. So, for example, you have a great fear of water, but you don't know where that fear of water comes from. It doesn't matter. Observe the fear itself. Go through the story that you tell yourself, go through the biggest trigger, go through the biggest emotional response, target the most amount of anxiety that you could feel, go through that experience in your mind again and again and again. Observe it objectively until you neutralize the emotional reaction attached to it. Okay, life isn't all peaches and roses. And so like, just because we have a handle on anxiety, just because we've shifted into a higher vibration, doesn't necessarily mean that life is never going to be challenging again. It's not about diminishing the challenge of life. It's about learning how to respond to it correctly. And that's what this is all about. So, what the book says is that by going into past traumas and observing it objectively, we neutralize it. And then when a new trauma or challenge happens in our life, we sit with it, we observe it, and by observing it without reaction, which takes possibly 20 times of observing it, 50 times of observing it, um, then we neutralize the energy behind it. And then we can go about our life without having the burden of that emotional aversion, right? We avoid things that we fear. What if you had no fears? What if you stopped avoiding? What if you neutralized your anxiety through a state of equanimity? Um, and I learned that through meditation. Like I learned that in order to channel, we need to observe objectively. And so if I can teach people how to overcome anxiety by observing it objectively, then you can go ahead and observe your current state of being objectively to get out of your body and go wherever you want to go, right? So this is truly the first sort of basic foundation, not a simple fix, but a true base foundation for remote viewing, for your psychic abilities. However, I truly believe we can't shift into a higher consciousness and state of vibration if all our freaking alarm bells are going off and we don't even know why it's going off and then how to turn them off. And that's what this book is here to do, right? We can't shift into a higher state of consciousness, leave our body, remote view other planets if we're stuck in fear, fight, flight, or freeze. That's why I didn't never expected to write a book on anxiety, but that's why I felt like this needs to happen in order to get people to the next level. And what's also really fascinating is just launched my Elizabeth April Foundation, which is really exciting. I haven't talked much about it. It's kind of been under wraps, but um, I'm about to fund 6 different charities, and it's all about targeting marginalized groups and providing them with food, water, shelter, like basic human needs, because I believe that people who are homeless or people who have been trafficked or people who are living on reservations can't shift into a higher state of consciousness because they don't have clean water to drink, right? So right now I'm really targeting both the physical sort of aspects of the basic needs that we need to have provided to us to get to that next level, and then the mental, right? And the non-physical aspects of those basic needs um, that we need to have. So yeah, and it's funny too, because the people in society who tend to have the most, okay, in a materialistic way, say the Western world, tend to be the most anxious, which I cover at the beginning of my book. Why is that? And that's like overstimulation and all the things. So anyway, I just feel like I'm here to shift people's consciousness, but I'm also hyper aware of what's holding people back from shifting into a higher state of consciousness. Anxiety is one of them, let me tell you. And then of course, basic access to needs is another. So very long-winded response there, but hopefully that gave you something that you needed. All right. Okay. A little follow-up. I'm not gonna like deep dive, but a little follow-up into Crystal's question. She said, I guess how to identify if a trauma is real or not. If you imagine something is a trauma, it is real because your brain cannot tell the difference. And this is what I say in the beginning of my book, because one of the categories of people that have the most amount of anxiety are trauma survivors. And what I say, like, as a definition of a trauma survivor, is someone who experienced something that was really challenging or difficult and was able to get through it. Just because you're a trauma survivor doesn't mean you're actually thriving in life. And typically that trauma still sticks with you. If you perceive your brother spilling your glass of milk when you were 5 years old as a trauma, and that affected you negatively, that's a trauma. I don't care what the rest of the world says, okay? So one person's trauma could be someone else's best day of their life, and it's like, well, why does that affect you? Why does that bother you? Like that's not a big deal compared to maybe other traumas. Um we can't distinguish, differentiate, or have some sort of scale of trauma. If it's perceived as a trauma, if it was challenging to you, if it was hurtful and painful to you, then it is a trauma. And it's something that you have to then look at, observe, and overcome. So it's not about is the trauma real or not? If it's affecting you, it is a trauma and it's something that you have to deal with. And that's also in the book as well. We go over trauma survivors and how to pinpoint traumas and neutralize them as well. But yeah, good question, good follow-up. Okay. So this is from just an anonymous attendee. What are the links between curiosity and anxiety? I'm going to answer this really quickly. This is really important though, because I just mentioned this in my chapter read. So up until this point in time, so many of us feel anxiety and we distract from it. And I did this my whole life, right? Sometimes I would feel a compulsion to do something in order to feel better. Like I use an example in my book when I was a kid. I had my favorite Beanie Baby. I had this like vision that I was about to throw my favorite Beanie Baby out the window. And in order to prevent myself from doing that, because I felt out of control in that moment, I had to roll, yes, I'm aging myself, roll up the window in order to prevent the Beanie Baby from being thrown out. So that's an obsession and then compulsion, right? That's like slight OCD. I was never diagnosed with OCD, but slight OCD tendencies. So sometimes the anxiety is so bad and you're so fearful that you have to do something to feel better, right? Most of the time we distract ourselves, or we pop that pill, or we disassociate, or whatever to feel better about the anxiety. What's incredible about being curious about anxiety is that it opens the door. All we want to do when we feel anxious is close that door. I don't have the time, I don't have the energy to deal with this anxiety. I'm going to shut it down. I'm going to bury it as far as I can go until it gets worse and it worse and worse and you can no longer bury it anymore and you're like, "Oh my God, something's got to give." All right? The second that we're curious about anxiety instead of fearful about anxiety, we open that door and we say, "Hi, alarm bell that's going off. Hello, spidey sense that's going off. What are you trying to tell me?" All anxiety is a messenger. That's it. And I go over this in the first part of the book, but we immediately perceive anxiety as bad because when we were hunter-gatherers, anxiety told us when we were being hunted. And now we watch a negative news program and it creates this sense of dis-ease in us that, oh my goodness, we're being stalked, we're being hunted, there's a lion after me. Our physical minds cannot perceive the threat, but our energy is perceiving the threat. Back in the day, that threat was real. That threat was life or death. Anxiety is a response in our body linked to our intuition. This is why the Western world cannot clearly identify it and solve it. And this is why the Eastern world cannot clearly identify and solve it. It's not just physical and it's not just metaphysical, it's both. We have to link and weave both of these concepts together. It is innately ancestral and biological, while also incredibly intuitive and spiritual, right? So when we get curious about it, we open that door, we listen to the message that it has to offer us. And trust me, at first, you have no idea what the message is. Eventually, when you keep listening, the message just becomes more and more clear and a lot easier to distinguish and discern. But you got to keep up with it. Okay, good question from Valerie. How did this information come to you, and how has it been for you applying the practices in your life? Really good. So the information came to me honestly just last year, 2024. I have suffered on and off from anxiety my whole life, both sort of a very low stimulating, like a restless, like a very subtle anxiety. And then, the pitch point of anxiety, like panic attacks, right? Like full blown, like just dripping sweat, racing heartbeat, think I'm going to throw up. And I've had that since childhood. Okay, so I've suffered from a little bit of all types of different anxieties. But last year, 2024, it was out of control. It was so bad, so out of control. And I was like, I'm done with this. Like, I have to finally do something about this. What do I do? What do I do about this? And I started looking for resources and nothing seemed to help. Everything was pinpointing the symptoms. And I'm like, I'm done with just dealing with the symptoms. I want to go to the root. I want to end this for good. Then that's when all of this information started downloading and coming to me. And then I started applying it. And unfortunately, my anxiety was coming from really big life choices. And once I opened the door to anxiety and I asked that question and I got curious about it and I said, what are you doing? Like, what are you here for? What are you trying to tell me that I'm not listening to? And what it told me was about some misalignments and what I needed to do to realign my life. And it was tricky. It was tricky because within that message, there was a lot that I needed to change. And I was not willing to listen and I was not willing to change. And every time I resisted, the anxiety got much, much worse until I finally decided to change and make some really big decisions. And I am so happy to say that since doing that and applying these techniques and neutralizing that and listening to the messages and changing those aspects of my life, I have been anxiety free for a while now, probably since the beginning-ish of the year. So, yeah, knock on wood about that. But also in the book, I teach you're never going to get rid of anxiety for good because anxiety is just our messenger. It's our spidey sense, it's our intuition. So, yeah, anxiety is going to come back in the future and tell you things. But as long as we listen, it's never going to stick around for long, if that makes sense. Yeah. Good question from Monica. Do we actually need to know the specific cause or root, or does repeated use of conscious awareness and not resisting the body's cues help over time without knowing the specific cause? Absolutely, yeah. So with the past, present, and future anxiety, I pinpoint sort of the cause coming from that, and then I have like solutions for that. So as long as you're applying the solutions and you're listening, there's many different solutions, and you're listening and you're showing up, you don't specifically need to know where it's coming from, but so when you really work on the fear and the instant fear reaction around anxiety, and you just show up and listen, the messages become more and more clear. So at first, you're just going to have a lot of fear and a lot of symptoms, and you're going to have no idea where any of that's coming from. When you start to apply the techniques and you start to relax your body and mind, and then you slowly open that door of curiosity to anxiety, then you start to get those messages. And for me, it was the same thing. I had no idea where, why, what, how. Um, I started to consciously observe, consciously relax, even if there were no messages or images or information at all. I would just tell myself that I was safe, which is also a technique in the book. I did a lot of decluttering and clearing just to get clarity of mind, which is also some solutions in the book. And then the messages became clear. And I didn't resist and I was open to it, and they became clearer and clearer and clearer as I move forward. So it's okay to not know, and you can still target it, and eventually you will start to know. I have no doubt about that. So don't get discouraged if you don't know and you can't pinpoint. Same thing, like I believe we can heal past lifetimes without ever going into a past life. It's the same sort of concept. It is very helpful when we can pinpoint the root cause. Oh yeah, it's the, news program, or it's the scary movie I watched last night that's freaking giving me anxiety tonight or tomorrow, like the next day. It's helpful when you can pinpoint where it's coming from, but it's not totally needed. It kind of just like expedites the process of managing the anxiety when we know where it's coming from, but we can still manage it and sustainably get rid of it by applying the practices. Oh, good question. Okay, Rose, what is your number one tip for handling anxiety from loved ones affecting us? Love this, especially at this time of the holiday season. And this is also in my book. I believe it's chapter 3, maybe, or 4. Yeah, it's got to be chapter 4, Present Moment Anxiety. Cord cutting. I lay out a whole cord cutting letter in my book, How to Cut Cords with Loved Ones with Love. Just know that when we do cut a cord, it doesn't mean that we are getting rid of that person forever. It just means we are creating healthy boundaries. Remember that any anything you touch, anything you interact with, anyone you talk to, any plant, any person, any thought you have creates an energetic cord. We are like the mycelium network, and we are all connected through energy, which is a big part of the book, right? And and so as we make these energetic connections and we create cords with people around us, especially family members, we have really big, thick cords. We got to clear that out. We have to cut those cords. We have to gain clarity by um, by creating energetic sovereignty in our own right. Okay. And so I go in the book, I go into writing a cord cutting letter, how to write it, what questions to ask, and then burning that cord cutting letter to release that. Remember that the next day after a cord cutting letter, you think about the person, there's a huge fight or blow up, and the cord is reconnected. In fact, a lot of times after cord cutting, there will be a really, really big blow up, or there will be complete removal of that person in your life, energetically, physically, um, and a lot of the time temporarily, after a cord cutting letter is done and burned. And it's like intuitively that person feels like they can no longer feed off of your energy. So they want to reconnect the cord by bringing your vibration down and then feeding off of your energy. That is so subconscious. Like usually people don't do that consciously, unless there's some sort of crazy mastermind. But that's why cord cutting is so important. The cord cutting letter is great. Visualizing cutting the cord with your loved ones multiple times a day, potentially, especially at first, is going to be really beneficial. Remember that, like, I truly don't believe in cutting someone off for the rest of your life, but I absolutely believe in healthy boundaries, especially when someone is taking more of your energy than they're giving you. So hopefully that makes sense. But that's in the book as well. Number one, piece of advice for those suffering with anxiety coming from family members and other people. Um, Another question, so many good questions, you guys. Is from Nicole. How do we tell the difference in our body between past, present, and future anxiety? So here's the thing. You really can't. I'll give you a couple of really subtle clues, and I go into each of them in the book. The symptoms and the reaction of anxiety is typically all the same. Everyone reacts and responds to anxiety in different ways, right? Like for me, it's like usually the panic attack. Um, but there are like very slight differences that are important to be aware of. Past anxiety, so anxiety coming from a lot of like trauma, old energy. Past anxiety is anxiety coming from the past, literally. I find that people who have unresolved energies and emotions that are built up in our body, the alarm bells have been ringing for a while. The main anxiety symptom is chronic anxiety. That is that very low level, sometimes barely detectable restlessness that you feel. It could also be a choice that you could have or should have made a couple years ago that maybe you regret, maybe you haven't fully dealt with. That could be considered a trauma. Trauma is just unresolved emotion and energy from the past, okay? Um, Chronic anxiety, low level, daily restlessness and unease is typically related to past anxiety. Present moment anxiety is typically related to overwhelm. So what I get into in the book, it could be, wow, I interacted with a lot of people today. Maybe it was a book tour. Maybe you, I don't know, went to the mall and it was crowded, or like, I don't know, maybe you had a big work conference or something. When you interact with a lot of people, when you choose to ingest a lot of knowledge, information, stimuli, it could be watching news programs all day. It could be just interacting with many sad people too. We're picking up on all that present moment anxiety, and that's when there's this feeling of overwhelm. That's typically the immediate panic anxiety attack That is like it builds, you can kind of feel it, you can kind of get those symptoms, and then it builds and you continue to ignore it because you don't want to deal with it. And then it builds to the point where you got to walk away, you got to catch your breath, you got to take off layers, you got to go purge or whatever. Usually the panic attacks, okay, are coming from present moment anxiety. Now, that's also like, do you have a lot of stuff in your home? Is your phone just flooded with apps? Is your desktop filled with files? Okay. Your environment, both digitally and physically, are all related to your mind. All right. And I say in the book, I go through all of that too, is like destimulating, decluttering your life is going to declutter your head. All right. As the oversaturated sponge. Um, I say a messy home is a messy mind. Messy mind is a messy home, whatever, something like that. And then future anxiety is usually related to the loops of fears of future what ifs. What if this happens? What if that happens? It's all future related. It's usually like hits us at like, you get up and go pee in the middle of the night, you come back to bed, it's 3 a.m., your mind is just going and you can't stop it. And it's just cycling into all of the future what ifs. And that's obviously future anxiety. And that's how that comes about. So that's how you differentiate sort of the subtle differences. And that's just from my own observation in my own life. And then, of course, for all of my clients who have suffered from anxiety as well. All right, one more good question, and then we're going to do a giveaway, live giveaway. Oh, so many good questions. All right, I'm going to rapid fire responses to these questions because I've got like four here. All right, Lisa. Do you recommend shadow work to get to the root cause of anxiety? I recommend shadow work to heal past traumas in order to neutralize past anxiety, 100%. I don't deep dive into shadow work in the book. I do talk about past life regression and how to clear old anxieties through past life regression, but 100% recommend shadow work in order to heal sustainably to heal anxiety because the old energy buildup is absolutely a cause of that sort of daily restlessness and dis-ease. And then next up is yeah, kind of same thing with the ancestral, the past life. This is from Rose again. Can we have ancestral or past life anxiety? And if so, how can we recognize? Absolutely, we can have anxiety from past lives. Great example here. In a past lifetime, you died from falling off of a boat in the middle of the ocean, and then you drowned, and then you get reincarnated into this life, and you have this irrational fear of water. And every time you're around big bodies of water, you have an anxiety attack. That is directly related to a trauma coming from a past life, and has nothing to do with this lifetime. So, like I mentioned before, you don't have to know about that past life in order to heal it. But what you do have to do is you have to observe the emotional reaction that you have created around water or any sort of irrational fear. Observe it to its pitch point, neutralize it through observing it without reaction. Observe it again, feel all the emotions, feel the anxiety, feel the panic, feel the, resistance, feel the danger, feel all of that, and then neutralize it through observing and again and again and again. And as long as you can observe and neutralize a fear, even if it's irrational and you don't know how to explain it, if we can do that in the present moment, then we're actually healing past lifetimes without ever having to go back there. Hopefully that makes sense. Okay, great. Just another rapid fire one. This is from Brandy. Do you think severe social anxiety can be tied to past life repercussions, or is it more often being created in real time by the fear messages we tell ourselves? So yeah, so severe social anxiety. So essentially you're saying like, is it like a karmic comeback from the past? Not typically, of course. You can never say yes or no to everything because circumstances can always vary and there's a lot of variables. I would say mostly severe social anxiety or social anxiety in general is a pretty damn good indication that you, my friend, are an empath. And what happens when we're an empath is we feel everyone's emotions everywhere we go. And whether we know it or not, it creates a sense of overwhelm in us and we just can't face it. I mean, it's like the title of the book, right? Like, your anxiety is giving me anxiety. Anxiety and emotions are contagious, all right? Because we are all interconnected into this mycelium sort of consciousness network. So, social anxiety, I find, is more about present moment anxiety and the energetic and emotional interconnections we have rather than the past punishment or karmic repercussions. So, in that way, bubbling technique, cord cutting, saging yourself, wearing some crystals. I don't go into all of those things, but absolutely, it's a healthy boundary thing. And for me as a kid, I was so energetically open that I had panic attacks every time we went out to a restaurant. And then, of course, I learned, okay, well, how do I shut this down? This isn't serving me. And then later on, I learned how to open it back up, but open it up on my terms with my rules, which is why I close my eyes when I channel, because that is my boundary. I'm like, I don't want to feel everything and I don't want to see ghosts and spirits every time I walk out of the door. I want to choose when to tap in and when not to tap in. So it's about taking your power back in that way. All right, good questions, everyone. I'm going to go ahead and clear my energy. I'm going to set my intention to choose two individuals who just really are in desperate need of a session right now. Obviously, that would probably be the majority of you. You don't need to raise your hand if you're just in the room. Once Lauren emails you and says, hey, here, let's book a session or whatever. And if you don't want to book a session, then that's okay. What we'll do is we'll say that's okay. And then we'll go to the list of emails in the Zoom registration and I'll just pick another one. Okay. So, yeah, I doubt anyone's going to turn down a session, but if you do, that's okay. There's absolutely no pressure. I know some people are kind of weird about knowing things. So, yeah, so let me just close my eyes, quiet my mind, and set my intention to choose two people who really need it right now. Just two more announcements, and then I'll go into that. Keep in mind that if you send us a screenshot of either the Kindle, the physical copy, or the Audible, if you've purchased any one of those, please send us the screenshot of that. We will send you over the anxiety survival kit. That'll get you through to the actual release, which is January 20th, is when all of your books are going to be sent out. I have hundreds of books right now. I am so freaking excited. Heads up, I will be in Los Angeles for a book signing on January 24th and 25th. I've got a workshop. So if you want to go to LA or you're in the California area, please mark on your calendars January 24th and 25th. I'm going to go ahead and add those links to my link tree. We're working on a landing page for the book tour right now. That should be done shortly. And then I'll, of course, post those dates out and the locations out across social media. And then I'm also going to have a book signing, just one, I think, in Las Vegas. So obviously, if you're sort of in my neck of the woods, I'll be here. I'm doing probably one of those. And then I've got two book signings happening in New York City, probably like right central New York. So just keep that in mind. I'm coming to the East Coast. I think that's going to be in March. And then I'll be back in Los Angeles February 20th weekend for the Conscious Life Expo. And then I'm going to London, England, actually, as well. And that'll be not until May for another big conference and book signing too. So if you want to get your book signed, either pre-purchase it, bring it in, get it signed on the spot, or I will definitely be having books for sale at each of the book signings. So just keep that in mind, mark some of your calendars, and I'll be sure to post out the dates and the locations and everything soon enough, but we're getting that together. And that's super exciting. All right, yeah, cool. Let me just close my eyes and yeah, set some intentions. 1 second. All right. Okay, first person that has won a 30-minute free session with me. And I know I've got a couple of Catherines in the Zoom room here. This is going to be Catherine Scott. Catherine Scott, congratulations. You have won a free 30-minute session. And I'll get Lauren to go ahead and email you details and we can book that in. Let me just go ahead and clear my energy and set my intentions for the next person. 1 second. All right. Next up, we've got Santo. We only have one Santo. Santo Adam. Congratulations. You are the second winner of the 30-minute free session. So we'll get Lauren to reach out to you guys, and I'll have more book readings and then more live free 30-minute session giveaways. If you want, join the creator membership right now while we have the Black Friday sale on. You get 33% off your membership for the first month. And then coming up on December 1st, which is right around the corner, I will be choosing another free 30-minute session giveaway. So if you want another chance to win, just be a creator member. You don't have to submit yourself. The second you're a creator, you kind of get put in the pool. And then I intuitively choose that person every single month as well. Okay. Love you guys so, so much. Seriously, thank you for being with me on this journey. And yeah, thank you for being open and vulnerable and ready to shift your life because that's what I'm here to help you do. All right. Have an incredible rest of your weekend. I will see all of you Monday for the live YouTube video. And I think we've got a Q&A coming up. Nope, nope, we just passed the Q&A. We've got the Galactic Federation meeting coming up too on the 11th. So I'll see you guys there for that as well. All right, bye for now.